rev up your engine. Now here's a very common problem. On this Dodge Caravan, the check engine light's on. It's been on for quite some time. The car runs perfectly fine, but it needs inspection and it won't pass with the check engine light. So let's hook up a scan tool and see what happens. Plug it in down here. I'll push on this as a system status. Alrighty, global OBD2, and what does it say? It says P0456. EVAP emission system leak detected, very small leak. But it also has P0401. EGR low insufficient flow. So let's use our brains to try to figure this out. Hopefully it isn't two different problems of just one. The EVAP system is what gets rid of the evaporating gas vapor so it doesn't pollute the atmosphere. And the EGR system, it keeps the exhaust gas burning to recirculate inside the engine so you don't create too many hydrocarbons that the catalytic converter would have to burn. Now as we look under the hood, and again use our heads, both of these systems use engine vacuum to operate. Perhaps there's a leak we can find that's easy to fix. So I'll get a little assortment of tools and a flashlight and start checking for bad hoses. So we'll loosen the clamp on the air box so we can get all this apart, and we'll pull that off. Once we get that out of the way, we can access things better. Many times things get disturbed when you're messing with the air filter, changing it out. Now we'll remove this box so we can see under better. 10mm socket, and see if anything's amiss under there. A little wiggling and out it comes. And now we can check out all these hoses that sometimes go bad. Now, handily enough, this allows us to access the test port for the EVAP system. There's the green cap, and lo and behold, the whole thing is just falling apart. You notice these stupid hoses, look, they don't even have clamps on them, they just put on. And what happens as they age, this gets swollen up and hard, and then the hoses just slide right off. So we're going to replace all of these rubber hoses. Now with the new hose from an auto parts store, you can buy it in bulk, you can see it's going to be tight and it's not going to leak. So we find all the connections and plug new ones in. We'll start right here. It's a real tight fit here. That is not going to leak. Then we'll cut off the length we need. Off that goes. Plug it in tight at the other end. So now you can tug on it, it's not coming off. Realize these old worn out hoses, they're going to be all over the place. They're under the gas tank. They're absolutely everywhere. I'm going to check them all and replace the ones that are the most worn, that you can see they're either cracked or they're just so wiggly they suck air, because it is a very small leak. Then we'll knock the dirt out of the air box and put that in place. It only goes in one way. A lot of wiggling. Then we'll bolt this on, the air filter back in, and the air filter box. And be sure to get this on tight. So when you snap this on, you tighten the clamp. You don't want air leaks. And you might have noticed I took this little green cap off. Sometimes these cap assemblies go bad too. This is just for testing. You take it off to test. I don't care. I got a hose on there now. If I want to test it, I'll just put my tester, pull the hose off, push the tester in there. You don't need this, and often they'll go bad. I just bypass the whole thing. Now, I couldn't find any bad hoses anywhere else. Maybe the leak made the EGR not work, but that's a small leak. So I'm getting this vacuum pump here, and we're going to check the EGR valve because it had low flow EGR. Could be it's rusted up. This thing is old. It's easy to get to. It's right here, and I've already pulled the hose off. So we're going to put my tester hose on and see what happens when we give it vacuum. Will the valve open or not? And as you can see, it's broken. It's supposed to open up, and it's not. When it gets vacuum, it's supposed to open and let the EGR gas flow. When you looked inside there, you should have seen this metal valve opening and closing, and it was stationary. It wasn't moving at all. You should have seen that valve opening and closing, and it does not open close. It just sat there. So it's going to need an EGR valve too to pass the stupid emissions test. There's just a bolt on the top and the bottom and two bolts here. That's it. Then the hose is just unplug and plug in. The car won't run any better, but then it'll pass the emissions test and the check engine light won't come back on. Now you might say, oh Scotty, you're a fool. Small EVAP leaks are often a bad gas cap. But as you can see, it's got a brand new one. I told him on the phone, I said, change the gas cap. He didn't, it didn't make any difference. But if you ever do get the cut, heck, try that first and make sure you turn it so it clicks. Because if it's not clicking, it's not sealing, and you'll get that code. I've had many customers either forget to put the gas cap back on when they filled it up or didn't get it tight. Then the stupid light comes on. And all they needed to do was put the gas cap back on that they forgot to and left at the gas station, or just make sure it's nice and tight. Make sure it clicks just right so that it's tight. Now, you never know, so we're going to reset this and take it for a drive. And resetting with this Innova tool is simple. You just push the erase button. It says, erase DTCs. One moment, please. Erase was successful. Now start it up and take it for a drive. To try to make it pass, you need to do what's called the drive cycle. It can take upwards of half an hour. You got to drive it around town a little, and of course, drive it on the highway at least 55 miles an hour for at least 10-15 minutes, so it can do all the tests that the computer does. As you drive it down the road, the computer is checking all the systems of the car. That's why it's called the drive cycle. It has to test everything out to see if the vehicle is working correctly. And like I said, speed up so you're going at least 50 miles an hour and drive it for about 15 minutes that way. And it's best to do it at a steady speed, then the computer can check itself better. If you have cruise control, put it on cruise control. Now, so far so good. There's no trouble codes yet, but it hasn't reset the monitors. As you can see by these flashing lights, the CAT, the EVAP, oxygen sensor heater, and EGR systems are not complete yet. See, we're almost out of gas, so I'm gonna let the customer drive it, then he can bring it back. Sometimes on these old cars, sometimes I've seen it go 200-300 miles before it resets them all. This is what makes getting your car inspected when they're old or a pain in the rear end if they do emissions testing, because the old vehicles often, they won't fail, but they won't pass, and they're in a limbo. They're not bad enough to trip a code, but they're not good enough to make all of these mill not readies be ready. You can have one mill not ready, but you can't have more than one. And in this case, there's still 5, so he's gonna have to drive it a while. But I am a betting man, and I'll bet that it'll end up failing because the EGR valve, that he's gonna have to buy one of those. Even though the idea behind changing it is simple. If you saw those nuts and bolts, especially the ones on the EGR hot exhaust tube that went to the valve, they were really rusty. Often all those pieces will break off on a 19-year-old car, then you got a real rat's nest. So we're gonna hope that he can drive it, and as soon as there's only one mill not ready, maybe it'll be the EGR not ready, he can get it inspected and not worry about it, because it runs perfectly fine otherwise. So now you know a little bit more about fixing small EVAP leaks on your vehicle. So the next time, why not do a little checking yourself before you shell out some mechanic $120, $140 an hour to work on it, doing stuff you can easily do yourself. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Roy Hines says, Scotty, is it normal for a 2014 BMW X5 5-liter twin turbo to burn oil? They have to be topped off between the oil change intervals. Thank you. Well, you're talking about topped up a little. That doesn't sound all that much. It is typical. Those are twin turbocharged engines. They got 2 turbos. And just wait. You hear me talk about BMWs being endless money pits. When those turbos break, and they all end up breaking on BMWs from my experience, you are going to spend a small fortune replacing it because they're part of the exhaust manifold. You got to buy the whole assembly. One customer of mine had to get them replaced. Luckily, he bought one of those extended warranties because it was going to cost like $8,500 to have it done. So think about this next time you're thinking about buying a BMW. Do I really want to spend that kind of money repairing it when it breaks? Because they do break. They're not like the BMWs of the 80s that will go 300,000-400,000, relatively trouble-free mileage. Not anymore. And it's normal to burn some oil like that. That's not that bad. They shouldn't burn any. In the 80s, I had customers with BMWs that hit 300,000 miles and their car didn't burn any oil. But they do today. My advice might be, it's a 2014. If you can trade it in anytime soon, it might not be a bad idea. You're going to get some big expenses in the near future, from my experience. You can give the mileage you have, but if you're over 100,000 miles, get ready for some big repair bills. RMS492 says, Scotty, I'm having trouble finding conventional motor oil. Only so-called synthetic blend. Is it okay to switch to that? Sure, because it's blended, meaning it's some synthetic and some normal. And I guarantee it's mainly normal because it's cheaper to make. And I don't know what the law is, but I had a big argument with an oil company executive years ago. And I said, now, what do you have in here? And he says, well, we can't tell. And I talked to another guy who knew what was in them. And he said, well, see, the additives are really expensive, so they don't put too much additives in. So I'm assuming that synthetic blend, probably it's mainly normal, a little bit of synthetic. So go ahead and use that. You'll never find what it is. They will not tell me. They're certainly not going to tell you just how the world goes. You can learn more about what's in your cereal box than what in either the oil or the gasoline that goes in your car, because they hide all that kind of information, but by law, they got to tell you what's in a cereal box. It's a good thing we don't eat or drink gasoline or oil, you know? So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.